What's up, everybody? Welcome to Facing Issues, a podcast about the art and science of music production. I am your host, Misfit, and will be your host for the entirety of season one. And today I'm joined by the one and only Slumberjack. What's up, guys?
Hello,
Hey
hello.
man,
Thank you
what
for
is
joining me
up?
today. I know you're from Australia, right?
That's right,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's probably one of my bucket list places. I wanted to go there so bad. It's got to be so fun.
You got to
And
come, man. We're waiting for you.
yeah, that will be an honor, to be honest. Yeah, I can't wait to like make a trip there. It's gonna be super fun. All right, so I wanted to start off by saying that Crucified is still one of my, and you probably know that it's still one of my uh, top probably 5 or 10 songs, music songs ever. And I think that production wise and vocals wise is like unmatched. So congrats, guys. That's like still one of my most listened songs ever.
Thank
One of the
you.
things that actually stood out to me in that production is the way you mixed vocals. So I wanted to actually ask you, from a production standpoint, if you have like a secret sauce about mixing vocals, and what would you say is your approach and your like go-to to make your top lines pop off?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, Crucified, obviously got a shout out to Dactyl and Moons who did the vocals on that track.
Sure.
So yeah, in terms of the vocal production, I mean we go for a very pop style vocal production. Obviously that track has that pop style production. I think, straight off the bat, one of the main things that we always do with our vocals is make them way louder than you think they need to be. Like
Mhm.
often with production, people will mix their vocals way too quiet. And so
Yeah.
we always, when we finish mixing our vocals, we turn it up 1, 2 dB. Even if it sounds weird to us, we just keep it there
Yeah,
because we
and
know it's
I
got to
guess
be,
I guess a really good test is when we're mixing our vocals. Once at the end of it, to set the level, once you have the compression done, we tend to turn the volume knob for the monitors all the way down. And if the vocals are still intelligible, then we know that's a very good indicator that that's a pretty good volume. Um, and we also like to do a test where when we mute the instrumental, can the vocal still carry itself? Would it be an impressive a cappella?
Yeah.
And that also sort of leads you to think, oh, maybe the verse is a little bit too dry. So then you think about reverbs and you think about harmonies and you think about not harmonies but doubles and all those little vocal licks that are maybe filtered and amped. So in essence, when you solo the vocal group at the end of the day and you mute everything else, can the vocal stand on its own? And when you have that, I feel like people will gravitate to that the most, because ultimately at the end of the day, we could make the craziest sound design
Yeah.
underneath, but the second you introduce a vocal, that's where non-producers or casual
Exactly.
music listeners connect to
Exactly.
immediately, right?
Exactly.
So
But
now,
so
ever since that, oh, sorry.
no, I
um
was just wanting to just ask one thing
mhm.
regarding one of the things you said just like a few moments ago. So is your vocal in general like the not the loudest, but like the highest in volume mixer channel you have in the project?
that and the
drums.
drums and the
And the
sub bass,
drums.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's nice because
Yeah.
like I know that like a lot of producers, like especially if they're not used to work with vocals, tend to like over push everything else but the vocal. Like have like a super loud sub bass, a super hard hitting drums, and sometimes they forget about, pretty much what it's all about because if you're working with the vocalist, you gotta give relevance to that.
Yeah, the second, I always think, even when you have a vocal chop and it's not like an actual hook, but the chop becomes a hook, for example, in the drop, the second you introduce a human-esque element
Exactly.
into a record, that's where everybody latches onto it. It almost negates everything that you have done, and sort of puts it on a lower priority. The second
Exactly.
there's vocal in, that's like the thing that people will look at.
I know.
So a
I know.
couple other notes in
Yeah.
terms of like the vocal mixing. Like obviously, Morg talked a lot about what we do to the vocal itself, but once you put a vocal in, you have to make room for it with the other stuff. So what we'll generally do is group everything else that's musical, so not drums, not bass, but everything else that's musical, put that together in a group, and then put an EQ on that group that is going to react to the vocal. So we use ProQ3, which has a sidechain mode. So the vocal goes into the sidechain, and then it's amazing. It shows you where the clashing frequencies are.
Yeah.
It highlights them in red. And so we usually put a little dip in those frequencies, and we use the built-in like compression mode. So the dip only happens when the vocal is actually active.
Okay, so basically
it's pretty much invisible.
Some sort of like dynamic EQ as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So
okay.
ProQ has the dynamic.
Yeah, I love it.
You could also achieve that using Sooth. Sooth is also pretty good on a spectral level. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
especially with like more resonances and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it works even better when there's a female vocal, especially a well-trained vocalist, where the singular note. I don't know if you've seen this, but like when you have a very well-trained vocalist, when especially if she sings a high note, it's a near perfect sine wave.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And so the build-up, if she can hold that note, then that build-up is going to happen. And Sooth just sort of helps duck the other guy so it can come through as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I love to be honest, I love both Sooth and like ProQ3. Also, I think that one of the cool features in ProQ3 is and actually is in Ableton as well, but it's so precise, the mid-side EQ feature. I think that is so important, especially also like I've been enjoying using a lot of dynamic mid-side EQ, which is so cool to like, especially if you want to like give some sort of space to the side frequencies, you can just like do some sort of like dynamic bell to make that, for example, that 1K, 2K frequency area pop off in the mix. And I think it's so interesting. So like this lead to my second question, which is how important would you think is the return/parallel processing in vocal mixing?
I think it's huge. We learned it I think in 2016, 2017, when we're mixing our record Fracture. And again, from here, we got a shout out to Styles Fuego, which is an incredible songwriter/producer. I actually sent him a version of it first. And I told him, this is done, we're excited to submit this. And he literally called us and he goes, don't put this out, it sucks.
What? What?
Yeah, and it was exactly that moment Fletch and I realized vocal production is a whole thing to learn, right?
Yeah.
So you got to focus on that. And then we were just slapping reverb at the time onto as an insert and then using a dry wet. But then he told us that if you were to just send it to a return channel, you could also sidechain the reverb to the dry vocal. And what that does for us is that I've always wondered how like Ariana Grande and like Mariah Carey gets all this like really clear, clean vocals, but then it's huge reverb as well.
Yeah.
So what it really does is when you sidechain your reverb, every time your vocal sings, so it ducks, and then when the vocal stops, the reverb comes out. It gives the illusion that it's constantly in a big space, but it's not. So you have this really tight sounding vocal, really upfront, very in your face, but then this beautiful shimmer on the side.
Exactly.
And ever since discovering that, it's been our template for years now.
I saw artists using like two different reverbs, both on Send, one for like the room and one for the air. So it's like pretty much, you're gonna like then balance like the dry signal with the room signal, with the air signal. And I was doing return processing, but just with the room. And then now that you said that the air makes such a difference, that like kind of makes me wonder how much like a plugin, for example, like Valhalla Shimmer could like work so well in these cases, or just like big throws. I think that it's so important to not only give a room, but also give the right air to a vocal, because a vocal needs to breathe, right? So I think that. So like now that leads me to another question, to be honest. So what would you say is your favorite plugin? You gotta choose one for vocal mixing. It can be.
This one. It can be this one. This is a quick one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love for vocals JJP vocals. Also CLA vocals. They're very similar. They're both from Waves.
It's a vocal chain, really.
JJP is Jack Joseph Puig, and CLA is a Chris Lord algae.
Yeah, algae.
They're basically both, very similar plugin. They have 6 sliders, space, presence, air,
Magic.
whatever it is,
Attitude.
magic. Yeah, they're just there's 2 female modes and a male mode, and literally you put that on a vocal and dial those things up, and it sounds beautiful.
It sounds. I've never used this, but it sounds like the way you described it. It sounds very intuitive, very easy to learn, and that's I think that one of the best things about, and one of the things that makes me feel that a plugin is going to change my workflow is how intuitive it is. Because sometimes we can have super cool plugins in terms of how they treat sound, but if they're too hard to learn and too hard to use, us producers maybe are just a bit reluctant to use them, right?
It bundles everything into one for us. So we'll generally put that at the start as a really good base point, and then when we really go into our vocal mixing, we can break it out and build our own version of that. So it's got reverb in there, it's got delay in there, it's got compression in there.
Some form of OTT,
fresh air. It's got everything in one. So you can put that on and it's great. Then when you really start to dial in your mix, you can say, okay, I'm going to pull this plugin off and I'm going to use, CLA2A. I'm going to use Valhalla Room. I'm going to use Fresh Air. I'm going to use ProQ, and really dial it in yourself. But JJP, especially when you just want a really, really nice sound really quickly, for vocals, just drop that in.
It's also important to use it early on for us, especially if a vocalist is present in the studio, just so we don't we keep the vibe strong, right?
Yeah.
So exactly. It sounds complete early on, so you keep morale up in the studio. And most of the time, you record it, you listen to the comp after you comp it, you're like, it's still so dry, it sounds like crap, and you sort of, why don't you sit down and chill out for a bit while we do this? It takes too long, so the vibe is gone. So JGP is the first thing we slap on, and then we will like Fletch said, we deconstruct it later on.
Yeah, I love it. That's a very smart approach, because especially if you're working with someone on the spot, it's good to have a almost final product since the very beginning. Because and then you can tweak everything, and then you can tweak every knob, and then just kind of make it perfect. But it's cool. It's cool to me to have something good straight from the beginning. So how many plugins would you say are in your vocal mixing racks? So I wanted to ask if you're a less is more approach guys, or more detailed and complex.
Less is more, I think.
Love it.
We tend to go for basic plugins and think about how people can relate to it. You could do the craziest auto pan and stuff, but you don't do it throughout the whole track, right? You don't do the tremolo throughout the whole track.
Exactly.
You do a little. Those I don't really consider vocal. I consider them ear candies based on the vocal source.
Absolutely.
The simpler it is, I find, the better. Most of the grunt work I find when we're in the studio is the tiny things that people don't find necessary, the subtle things like breath control, chopping out all the little sibilants,
so
lip sounds
annoying.
And the tongue sounds and the tongue. So once you do any sort of compression or distortion or any fresh air, any high end stuff, it becomes so apparent, right? And cutting out the quiet bits, and then cutting just the attack into the vocal, all those will add up, because it gets multiplied and amplified with the effects that you have on your chain.
Exactly.
But simple is usually the best approach, I find.
Oh, awesome. I agree with you guys 100%. I think that less is more is the best approach ever to music, because especially in the early stages of productions, it's not ideal to me to overcomplicate stuff, because as you said before, you can you might end up losing that vibe or losing that flow. So actually, now that we talk about plugins and especially mixing plugins, I wanted to ask you the opposite questions. What would you say is your go-to plugin for creative stuff?
Fletch?
I'm really loving we just got Complete 14.
Oh.
And there's some really cool stuff in the contact libraries, Firelight, Ashlight, that series. So there's Firelight, Ashlight, and one more. They're like granular synth textural plugins, and you can basically just load up a preset and play some stuff on the keyboard, and you just get these crazy textures that really just inspire moods and feelings and melodies and stuff. Just out of these like dark textures.
And the cool thing about Contact is that like the way it sounds, like the way Contact libraries sound since the very beginning is so clean, and sometimes pretty much I think like 99% of the times you don't need to like over mix those, or just like they're just like good.
It's broadcast ready. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So like now that we talked about like all these plugins, all these creative aspects of like music production and vocal mixing, I wanted to ask you, what would you consider your the most sonically complex song you made throughout like your entire career?
My pick would be North on the Black and Blue EP.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. That one, I remember sitting in LA on my on our dining table, just pulling my hair out, not being able to understand what is going on. Like no matter how I mix, it wasn't sounding the way we wanted it to sound. And then we realized we were actually in F sharp major. The song was in major. So there were actually frequencies and notes in there that were hitting the A, which makes it a minor third. And it was killing me, but I thought it was a mixing issue until later on, we sort of changed the sub bass to sing together with the melody and or the hook. Then it all fell into place. I just remember that being the most sonically stressful piece that we've ever done. But I'm not sure about Fletch. What do you think was stressful?
I remember we spent a whole day in the studio mixing North, and then at the end of the day, we listened back to the original, and we were like, "Scrap it."
Yeah, we did like 10 hours, and then we did 10 hours, and then we
10-hour session.
Yeah,
no,
we
usually do like
we usually do pretty long. Like we're in the studio, and then we'll come back.
Oof.
Yeah,
we'll come back, and then we threw it in the bin.
It was terrible.
It sounds very stressful. Like 10-hour session, like probably with how many? Like,
maybe
breaks?
like 6 or 8. But I just in my mind I've overemphasized it because it's just it took a whole year like of just V1, V2, V12, and then back to V8 again. Man,
you know that you're hitting like V10 is gonna be like a very stressful song. V10, V15 is gonna be like a very stressful song. Like sometimes I feel that like I've been mixing and producing a song until V40, and I ended up not finishing it because as I said before, I lost that creative like impulse, that creative like flow. And I was just like tweaking knobs at some point, and I said, "Nah, fuck it. Like, I don't want to finish this one." I think that, like, I don't know. Some producers like always tell me that you gotta finish the main idea in like one session.
Yeah,
but I agree.
It's like, to me, it's very hard because I tend to work like, of course, like I do multiple sessions a day. Like, for example, 3 hours in the morning, then 5 hours or 4 hours in the afternoon. But like, if I consider like the whole day as a session, I cannot see myself completing the whole song, this whole song structure. I'd rather like work on maybe like for the whole day in intro, then build up, and then maybe like the skeleton, the backbone of the drop, if there's a drop. I cannot see myself like making a full song, even if it's just like an idea in one day. It sounds like very, I don't know, very stressful.
I think when we say
it down.
I think when we say idea, it's like you can see where the track's going. You know, you've got like a melody, like it's the thing that is the track is done. You know, it's not it's
the very thing that you beatbox or you hum in the shower.
Exactly. Okay.
As long as you get that,
nail that. Yeah. So it's mostly I'd say it's about 60 to 70% songwriting.
Yeah.
And then you sort of pick the right sound to deliver that message. And once you have it, then it can come later on. You know, we have songs, for example, our latest release, Reptiles, we've had it in our computer since 2017, 2018. And but the hook was still there. It was that like ravey minor second hook.
Yeah.
But then we never really looked into it because we didn't have the necessary influence or the experience to pull that off. We had it in the trap beat at 128. It was terrible.
That's crazy. So you basically like left an idea and kind of forgot about that for 4 to 5 years. How
Yeah.
like how come? Like how did you still like remember about that? How do you still want to, and that's a good thing. How did you still want to go back to that idea and finish that? I think that at least for me, it's like if I'm not like finishing a song that I started in like 1 or 2 months, then it's over. Like I don't know. Like that's a good thing. Like I respect you for that.
I think it's more the detachment that we have
Okay.
about our music, because I feel like the more attached you are, the more you're tweaking knobs for the sake of fulfilling your inner desire to be a producer. Whereas if
Yeah.
we just sketch real quick and dump it, and then we listen to it later on, it almost feels like someone else at a different time, at a different mindset wrote it. So then it's almost like we just discovered a sample.
That's smart. That's very smart.
Like we forget about it completely.
I might start to like use this approach because I think it's like
Yeah.
a very, very smart approach. I didn't think about that at all. And I think that like when you start something and then you kind of like put that on hold, maybe sometimes that, especially one of the craziest thing is that when you kind of go through and scan through your hard drive and then listen to that idea made back in, I don't know, 2018, and you said something like, damn, but that kind of clicks, that kind of goes. So I think that like your approach is very smart, is very not only professional but also very, like as you said, attached to your music. And I feel that when you're able to being not only attached by your past releases but also to your old ideas, I think that's where like that's what makes you like a very like professional producer. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Like
I think
prolific, I guess that's
yeah,
the word you were looking for. But it's
yeah,
like the detachment from the ego is the most important thing. The feeling that
absolutely.
you have to make an idea so good that puts unnecessary pressure on
Oh,
the producer in that time and space, you
I
know.
know.
But if you forget about it and you come back later on, we find it a challenge for the both of us to dig up all ideas and go, how can we modernize this? So you just treat it like a remix, and I'm sure you find out that remixes are way easier than coming up with ideas by yourself. But this was something that you came up years ago. So you're just remixing an old idea. You're just injecting with a little bit of modern skill and techniques you've learned now, and then bang. And it did, like we did the whole idea when we revisited in 2022. We sort of got the main idea down with the drop in a day, less than a day, and then we just tweaked the rest later on without putting too much pressure on it. It's just a club track. So as long as you get a believable, decent build and a good drop and then a nice breakdown, that's you want. If you can do a minute or a minute 30, that's your song. You just have to double it and then do some variation.
Because some songs are meant to, you know, not only be played at festival or clubs, but are like more, I would say, festival/clubs oriented. So you will like probably enjoy a specific song better in a club sound system rather than at your home with your like AirPods on. So but like I wanted to ask you one question that I kind of forgot about that. Do you have some sort of like in your studio, do you have some hardware gear? Do you have like synths or you think Op1, right?
Yeah, it's the OP1, yeah.
That's
the only one.
I've heard
It's
a lot of like mixed feelings about that, but I tried that just once, so I don't want to say, I don't want to like have a word on that. Do you think it's worth the price?
I think it's a very quality piece of gear. Like right now in my hands, it feels amazing.
Yeah,
it's heavy, it's cool. I don't think we've never used it in a song. And I don't think we will. but I like to have it on my desk because it's a fun toy.
It's
It's
like it's
inspiring to play
inspirational.
with.
It's inspiring. Yeah. It's not necessarily the craziest thing, but it's like if you think is it value for money? Like it depends on what your outcome is, right?
Yeah.
For us, it was just a wacky piece of thing that we can twist around, and then some wacky sounds come out, and then we go, okay, we can remake that in Serum because we get better
Okay.
control.
Okay. So
It's
it's
fun.
like
It reminds me that music's supposed to be fun, you know?
exactly.
Yeah,
So it's almost like a sort of song starter, maybe.
yeah.
Love
Idea
that.
starter,
Even
beat
not
starter,
even.
a groove
I
starter.
just yeah, it's just a
Vibe starter.
nice. It's a
Yeah.
nice thing. It looks nice. It feels nice.
It's also
It's fun.
it's very like heavy if you like compared to the size of that. I think it's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty
a
heavy.
heavy piece of equipment.
Yeah.
I reckon there's got to be weights in there to make it feel solid, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
I
like we. Oh, sorry.
no 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 go
When it
ahead. I'm
comes
sorry.
to having the OP1, I think what we're trying to say is that if you're not working in music, you're at the moment, and you shouldn't be working in music 24/7 or every waking moment of your life, and you still want to be honing your craft, you could do that. So what Fletch does is he plays with the OP1. I would just go onto the piano and just jam. So I'm not necessarily producing, and I'm not putting any pressure on like finishing my job, but I'm still immersed in musicality and being surrounded by music in other means like playing the guitar or playing the piano. So I feel like you're still stimulating the mind in a healthier way without pressure, and then when you go back later on, you're just like, regardless of what Fletcher has done on OP1, it's just a good reset to the brain to
Yeah.
start again.
And sometimes maybe like just jamming out with a piano or with a guitar, you might come up with a nice riff or a
Yeah.
nice motif. And then maybe I don't
Yeah.
know, you probably either like record that on your phone or just like and that's a very good thing. Now I've been enjoying this conversation. I wanted to ask you one question. We talk about your music a lot, and now I want to ask you a question about other people's music. So just to wrap it up, this beautiful conversation, I would love for you to name three songs that are crazy in any aspect of music production that you listen to in these days or that you've been like saving for years, like that you probably discovered like years ago. So I would love you to name three songs that in your opinion are like crazy in terms of sound design, production, mixing, or anything.
Fletch.
Yeah, my favorite still blows my mind to this day is the Make Those Moves by I Am Legion.
Yeah.
Speaking of vocal mixing, that is
Yeah.
the thickest, fattest, most aggressive bass and drums and bass, and somehow the vocal is the clearest thing you've ever heard. It's a
Zero
wall of
mud.
sound, and the vocal just comes through like
Right.
nothing. And I remember just when I first heard that, just putting it on and just replaying again and again and again
I
when that
love that
first
thing.
verse comes in, and just being like, how is this possible? How
I
is that
hate
much
how
sound?
inadequate. I hate how inadequate that track makes everybody feels. You listen to it and you're just like, I don't know how that's possible. We've tried making that like big, crazy, noisy bass and then putting a vocal. It takes up so much space and
I
there's no
know,
room.
I know.
They did it, noisier, man. So you got to give it to them.
Like the legends, like the goats. That's like
Yeah, they're gods.
yeah. That it's not even up to debate, to be honest.
Yeah.
So what's your pick, Morgan?
My pick at the moment is Skrillex's Tears, the new one on Quest for Fire.
Love that. And I
Yeah.
think that song is the first time I listened to that song, I was like, okay, the sound design is like crazy good because like it's unexpected, right? You didn't expect that kind of pluck. But then I realized that's the mixing what makes that song stand out to me.
The whole
It's
album's
so
mix
clean.
is incredible.
That's true. That's true. Also, I think
Incredible.
that the approach and I think that like Sleepnet played a major role in not only the sound design but also in the mixing of that specific drop to be both
That
drops, to be
sound,
honest.
that noise little peak.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't, and then the rhythm is also so special. The rhythm became the hook in you know, in and of itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an insane song. And like, to wrap it up, I wanted to like give you guys my pick, which is not a recent song because I've been heard that this song has been produced like years ago, but it just came out like last year, I think, which is like Disco Bloodbath by Space Laces. I think,
Okay.
dude, that song,
Okay.
and he made that song.
I'm writing that down on my phone.
I think that he made, like, let me check how, no, when did he make that Disco?
He's a very, very, very good producer.
No,
Mhm.
he's insane. And that song, like,
Disco Bloodbath. Yeah.
yeah, that came out last year, but I've been heard that that song was made in, I think, 2012 or 2013. Just listen to that song and tell me, okay, this is just a song that could come out in 2030 or 2040. It's like the way it's mixed, the way it's like arranged, it's insane.
I'm gonna listen to that.
Yeah,
This is the second time someone's mentioned Space Laces to me in a 1 week period.
Space Laces is one of the goats. Yeah, it's so good.
Okay. All right. I'll do it. We'll do it. We'll
That's
listen to it.
that's cool. You gotta tell me like if you like that. Guys, I think that we had an amazing conversation. I loved every minute of it, and
Thank you.
I think that we should like definitely cook up something in the future if you guys are down.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've been, that's unrelated to the podcast, but I wanted to mention that because I always forget about things, and I don't want to forget about this. And thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you had a
Thank you
great
for having
time.
us.
I hope you got a great time, and I hope to see you someday in real life in the future. And
Well, if you come to Australia, give us a text. And
oh,
if you ever
same
stop by in
thing.
Perth, stay with me, man. We could jam in the
Oh,
studio.
that would be crazy. Same thing if you guys ever like come to Europe or to Italy, just like hit me up, and I'd be so glad to give you a tour.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Now.
All right, guys. Thank you so much again, and yeah,
Thank you.
speak soon.
Thank you,
Speak
man.
soon, man.
Catch
Thank
ya.
you.